Hello, I'm Filippo Baldinucci. I'd like to introduce myself and tell you a bit about why I've started this channel and what I hope to accomplish with it. While studying art, I learned a lot about feminist theory, history, and criticism, and this really challenged me. It challenged me to rethink my assumptions and positions, and it also raised some serious concerns, particularly about radical social justice activism on college campuses. I am concerned that this is not just the behavior of a few aberrant, misbehaving students, but rather that this is something that the students are being taught to do by their professors and within the classroom. From my own experience, most of my instructors often portrayed feminist politics as synonymous with justice. One went as far as to assume that every single student in the classroom had to be a progressive while discussing politically charged art by the Guerrilla Girls. In other words, feminism wasn't merely the correct viewpoint, it was the sole viewpoint. Because so many of my professors and peers were pro-social justice, I began to seek out opposing viewpoints. This is what led me to discover the Factual Feminist video series by Professor Christina Hoff Sommers. Because the factual feminist often encourages critics of feminism to not just dismiss feminists, but investigate their claims, this has inspired me to take this sort of approach to feminism in my own series. I've also been very inspired by these two YouTube channels, Sargon of Akkad and Tildir. In particular, I'm inspired by how Sargon of Akkad has used his YouTube channel not to just talk about his opinions, but really to learn about feminism and about social justice as he talks about them. In other words, I like how people who watch Sargon of Akkad learn along with him. As for Tildir, I'd say his video, Intellectual Rigor versus Ponage, really prompted me to start doing my own work, rather than just thinking about this and reading about this in my own private life. So what do I hope to say on YouTube that hasn't already been said 1,000 times by other people? Well, I'd say this channel's focus is to read older books and articles which are important in the history of feminism and social justice activism. I want to put less emphasis on what's happening today and more emphasis on foundations. As I read and learn, I'd like you to be able to read and learn along with me. To that end, I'm not going to be attempting, initially at least, to try to counter or refute the arguments I'm reading. Rather, my goal is to read, to understand, to try to explain it to you, and to ask some basic questions along the way. In the vein of Tildir, I want to try to be a stickler about providing citations to what I'm talking about. In addition to citing the book or the article itself, I'm also going to try to provide for you all the citations that the author makes within their own work. Also, I think it'll be fun to provide some simple diagrams and illustrations which connect with the work I'm reading. As you may have guessed, I'm an artist myself, and I think that having some visual aids might really help in our understanding what we're reading and what we're thinking about. Here are some things for those of you watching to keep in mind. I don't consider myself an expert on the history of feminism or the philosophy of social justice. I'm really going to be learning with fresh eyes. I have an avid love for art history, and generally my interest in feminism comes from where feminism has intersected with art history through feminist art. However, I will be, in addition to talking about feminist art history, talk about some general texts that are relevant to any conversation you might have about feminism, whether it's philosophy, whether it's biology. Also, if you're someone who's watching who happens to consider yourself a feminist or a strong advocate of social justice, I want you to know that I'm going to make every attempt to be fair to the authors I'm reading. I don't want to dismiss them out of hand. I really do want to listen to and understand their argument. But you should know that I am someone who is critical of feminism in my own thinking. And this may come across in some of the questions I ask, but that's what the YouTube comment section is for. If you think I'm totally off base or am simply misunderstanding what I'm reading, feel free to let me know in the comment section. If you'd also like to point me in the direction of what you think might be some really good books or articles to discuss that are relevant to feminism or social justice in art, feel free to let me know. I'd really appreciate that kind of feedback. Thank you so much for watching. Whatever your perspective is, whether you're in favor of social justice or you're more critical of social justice, I really hope that what I provide on this channel will be helpful to you in your studies and in your understanding of these topics and this discussion. Your most devoted servant, Filippo Baldinucci.